All right, this is the 8th lesson, 8th week on minor prophets, and we looked at Amos, Joel and Amos, and now we're moving to Obadiah.
Oh.
Obadiah is a short book, it has one chapter. Of course, it's an important book, just like all the rest. And it tells of the prophecy destruction of Edom. It goes along with what we talked about earlier, Malachi, Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated. And this gives us the understanding as to why God did judge Edom, Esau, as a nation. The theme of the book is the fall of Edom. It is where the city of Petra would later be built. Petra was not there when the book of Obadiah was written, when the Edomites were. It was actually the Nabateans, I think. Nabateans, if that's how you pronounce it, actually built the city in 312 BC. And we're talking about 800 BC when Obadiah was written. And, I mean,
Can you tell us what that C means? Excuse me, but what does that C mean again?
Approximately.
Approximately.
Approximately. Yeah. If you can see this picture, it's just a building that was carved into the rock. I mean, this is one. There's all over the place. That is what we call Petra. If you were to go to Jordan today, you can go to the city of Petra and see all these carved out. I mean, it's really amazing. I've had the privilege of going there. Me and my daughter went in 2005. And then you see this alleyway through here. How well you can see that. Probably could have got a better picture. But basically you go through, winding back and forth through this cavern, I'm not sure what you want to call it, I guess cavern, as you go through there, making it a very well fortified city. So if you were to come into the city, that's how you had to come. You didn't have airplanes back then, you didn't have anything else, so you came in that way. In fact, even in the rock, because the whole rock bottom, you can still see where wagon wheels were at, where they had carved into the rock over the years. And so it's quite a ways to get in there. The Edomites can stand on top of the mountain and throw down hot oil on the people, shoot arrows on the people. So it's a very easily fortified city. And because of that, they became very prideful. You know, who can defeat us? I mean, we're the greatest nation. No matter who comes in, we know we're going to win. And it was a very, very good place in those days to be. Now, today it wasn't because we have airplanes and missiles and what have you. But it was there. In fact, Edom, this is the Jordan, Sea of Galilee, Jordan River, and the, this map's not exactly right here. The Dead Sea, really not a completely accurate map, but anyway, the Dead Sea. Edom would have been to the south of Judah at this point, and so Petra would have been here. So this has been where the Edomites were at. It wasn't called Petra then, but the location would be the same. Edom had sided with Israel's enemies. Remember, look at the judgment of nations in the other books. You remember the basis of the judgment. Remember what the basis of God's judgment is of these nations?
He would judge them according to how they treated Israel.
Yeah, and that's found in what chapter? And what covenant is that? Let's put that way. Abrahamic covenant. Genesis 12. I will bless them
And they bless, yeah.
and curse them and curse thee. So,
It's 12:3, isn't it?
yeah, begins 12:3, yeah. Yeah. And so God judged them because of their sin, which was pride. You know, we can't be defeated. We don't need God. We can take care of ourselves. And of course, that's one of the problems today with people. We live in a very wealthy nation. Yeah, I know there's poverty, but a lot of the people in poverty are living luxurious according to some nations. It really is amazing what we do have in this country. And I've said this many times, and I'm sure it still rings true, is that we can all go home today and throw away half of everything that we have and still have plenty. Growing up, I never saw storage buildings, storage places around. Now they're everywhere. Why? Because people have so much that they have to rent storage building just keep their stuff in. You know, their basements are full, now they got a storage building.
And sometimes they actually forget they got the stuff in
That
storage.
happens a lot. People die, but nobody knows. That's what end up selling them. Makes for bad TV, I think. I was actually watching one last night, episode last night. It's out in years, and I just happened to see it last night. It's ridiculous. But anyway, there's the idea of pride and the treachery. Pride against God. Who could defeat us? You know, Israel can't. We're well fortified. Then not only their pride, but their treachery. The sins themselves by siding with Israel's enemies. What happened many times was Israel was fighting a nation, the Edomites would come in and kidnap the people. Kind of like with what happened with David and his men when David had joined up with the Amalekites. And the Amalekites were going to go to war against Israel, against King Saul. And so they asked David to join them, and David did. David wanted to join with them, and the king wanted him to join with them. But then the other princes of the Amalekites decided we don't want him because he doesn't may turn on us. So they sent him away, and he went back to the city of Ziklag, a city that was given to him by the Amalekites. And when he got to there, he found out that they had, he was with the Philistines. And then we got back, it was the Amalekites that actually kidnapped his wife and all their families, all the people there, and stole all their stuff. And that was typical of what would happen in times of war here with Israel. When they were fighting one nation, Edom would slip in behind it and steal stuff. And so God judged them for that. And not only them, but other nations did the same thing. Goes back to the struggle between Jacob and Esau. Again, in Malachi 4, Jacob have I loved and Esau have I hated. Not Jacob the person and Esau the person. But as Malachi says, with Esau and his mountains have I laid waste. So he's talking about the nations themselves. Later on, Herod was an Edomite. And he attempted to kill Jesus. And when they departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take a young child and his mother and flee to Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word. For Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. So this is Herod the Great. Who, I think it's kind of strange, but if you look at his date of death, it's usually marked like 5 BC, which is the same time some people put Jesus' birth at 5 BC. It's kind of strange, isn't it? Because BC means before Christ, and Jesus was born 5 years before he was born. Well, the reason that happened is that they made the calendar, the Julian calendar, and then later on realized that there was a mistake in the calendar. And so instead of changing the date, they just backed up the calendar and said that instead of changing what year this is, we'll just say the calendar started 5 years before. I think it seemed like in the 1700s, the Gregorian calendar changed. The calendar was changed then for 12 days. Basically, everything shifted 12 days. It's kind of weird. Or 13 days. Because Russian New Year's is January 13th. So they shifted 13 days when they did that. So it's kind of strange when the New Year would be. Because they went by the Julian calendar longer than we did. Nevertheless. But again, Edom here, Obadiah shows the struggle here between Jacob and Esau, the historic struggle from the very beginning. And, you know, to be honest with you, as much Jacob's fault as it was Esau's. When Jacob went to Padanaram, and stayed there for 20 years, and got married several times, came back down, and as he's come back down, he was greatly afraid of Esau. And so he actually sent some animals and everything to Esau, trying to find favor with him. Esau said, I don't want that. And Esau basically said, you know, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm not trying to hurt you anymore. And Jacob, you know, it's great. And so Esau said, come on down, and we'll sit down and talk about these things. And Jacob said, I will as soon as I take care of my animals, get them in the land. And Jacob took his animals in the land and never did go down and meet Esau.
Did he know that when he said that?
Yeah, I have a feeling, you know, in Jacob's mind, he might thought, he's just trying to get me down there to kill me. But nevertheless, imagine what history would be like. Different, you know, one decision made changed history. You know, with Joshua, in Joshua chapter 9, when he failed to ask counsel of the Lord, it included, you know, the Canaanites in Israel causing problems later on. Because of one lack of prayer. Because of Jacob here not doing what he said he would do. Probably angered Esau even more after that. And so they became enemies.
And just like Ishmael, his nation.
Yeah.
That's what we having so many problems now.
Yeah. Yeah.
His son.
Yeah. Well, because Abraham trying to figure out a way for God to answer his prayer.
We
You know,
wait.
it's kind of
We wait
like,
on God.
yeah, it's what we do.
Absolutely.
You know, we have a need, and so we tell God how to answer it.
Yeah.
And that's what Abraham did. So, okay, first he said, my servant, Eliezer will be my heir. And God said, no. He said, okay, I'll have a son through Hagar. Who did God tell in the first place that they will have a son? Sarah. I mean, remember she laughed. You know, she was there, so.
And then say she didn't like it.
Yeah. God here said Edom would be reduced because of their contempt for God. Again, when people become so prideful, you have all these billionaires today, and as far as I know, all of them proclaim to be atheists. Bezos is, Bill Gates is, Branson, guy from England, Virgin Airlines, whatever. They all claim to be atheists. Why? Because they don't have no reason to trust God. They have all the money they'll ever need, more than they'll ever need. Because I remember I figured out Jeff Bezos a couple years back, he could spend, I think it's $9 million a day for 53 years and not run out of money. And so, you know, would he ever sit down and say, give us this day our daily bread? And so that money is not a blessing, it's a curse. And how long is he going to live? What was the Apple guy, Jobs, Steve Jobs? He was young when he died. I think he was in his 40s, wasn't he? I think so. Young anyway.
And he claimed all the way to the end that he was atheist, didn't he?
I think it seemed like he did. But that's what happens when people, it's not wrong to have money, it's not a sin to have money.
It's not.
But when money has you, that's the problem. And that's, you know, Edom here is not necessarily money, but it's more territory that we're in the well-fortified place, so we don't need God. The pride, God said, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. This is what that I mentioned earlier, newsletter, whatever that somebody sent me. It was a black activist group years ago, probably 15 years ago or more, that was saying that all white people are of the devil. And they said, this is what they quoted. It said, who shall bring me down to the ground, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars. And that happened, they said, in 1969, the man landed on the moon in the lunar module, the Eagle, and he made his nest among the stars. And so they said, this is God's judgment on white people, because since it was white people went to the moon, God's going to judge all the white people, because we made our nest among the stars.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, and that's like, you know, that's that deep ingrained prejudice that they'll say anything. I mean, the most wildest things, and they'll have an audience. And people will listen to something. And it's on both sides. I mean, it's white, it's black, it's whatever. I wish I could find that copy of the Ku Klux Klan application that somebody gave me. I got it somewhere. I think we ought to fill it out. Everybody fill it out and see what happens.
Well, you know, there was in a neighborhood where there are a mixed neighborhood, and I guess they didn't know that black people lived in this neighborhood, so they went around putting their propaganda on mailboxes, for the white people, not for the blacks, but they didn't know it, and some black people got it, and it was like, what?
Yeah. I remember years ago, somehow the Klan came up, and there was a Barbara Schaffner was her name, black student I had. And so I said my Klan, she said, oh, I love the Klan. And I thought, what? She said, they beat up my granddad. And I thought, okay. She said, well, my granddaddy was cheating on my grandma, and they don't like adultery, so they beat him up. And she said, that was the greatest thing that happened. I thought, well, that might be one benefit, but there's a lot of other things that outweigh it. She actually said in their town they didn't have any problems with them, but they would go on crusades like that to beat somebody. But anyway, that doesn't justify it. God told them that everything would be taken, all their treasures would be taken. As with any nation, they had to have allies, and God said their allies would turn on them. You know, the best way to overtake a nation is gradually. And it's not immediately. You don't go in, whoever the enemy is against the United States today would come into this country today and capture all of us. It wouldn't stand because people would fight. But if they come in slowly over time, and that's what happened here with Obadiah, in the book of Obadiah, with Edom. The wise men confounded, the soldiers became confused. Heman was one of the chief cities at this time. Remember, Petra wasn't actually a city at this time. It wasn't called Petra. Although the territory obviously was still there. Edom actually was noted for the wise men. In fact, in the book of Job, you have Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar would come in. Eliphaz is considered the wise of his friend. He was from Teman. And so that'd be 5 miles from what we now call Petra in Edom. Edom, for the most part, is across the Jordan River from Israel, what we think of. But in these days, it actually included more of Israel's property. They had actually taken some of Israel's property. And of course, Teman was even, Petra is on the other side of the Jordan, and Teman is 5 miles even further than that. So it wasn't right next to them. They deserted Judah in their time of need. When they could have helped, they didn't. Remember, Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of red soup. And the name Edom means red soup. And people always criticize and say that, that was stupid for him to do. I say it's actually smart of him. It was a good thing he did. Why? Because he never owned the birthright. God told him before they were born that the elder would serve the younger. And so Esau came out first. And so it was already settled in God's plan. Mom and Dad had a different idea. But so when Esau sold it, at least he got something for it.
That's a risk.
Yeah.
I heard that preached, I don't know whether it was David Jeremiah or who, but somebody preached that about that yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
About that bowl of soup.
Yeah. 4 different times we see Edom try to destroy Judah in different reigns of different kings. Joram, and Uzziah, all wicked kings. Ahaz, the 12th king, the father of Hezekiah. And then the very last king of Israel, Zedekiah. So when Israel was in trouble with the Babylonians here in the days of Zedekiah, because it's 597, remember that Nebuchadnezzar actually came in 605 BC and started the takeover of Judah. While that was going on, Edom got in their jabs. So again, Abrahamic covenant. I will bless them and bless thee, and curse them and curse thee. And that's why it's so important that we as a nation support Israel. As I said before, though, it doesn't mean we agree with everything that they do. We don't have to do that. Last screen we'll look at here is their condemnation. It says, for the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen. What thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. Judgment will come. And it did come upon them. Take a little break. Can you get that?